Hi, I'm Paul Duchesne and welcome to Mama Paul's video podcast. Today is Saturday, January 23rd, 2021. We are in a new era and we've all had quite a wonderful week. There was a lot of joy and a celebration. It sort of felt like a combination of Christmas and New Year's this week when the inauguration finally took place, what appeared to be a peaceful inauguration, which was more than inspiring. Now, I'm not the most centrist, flag-waving patriot around. Let me be clear about that. But I'll tell you, that inauguration was absolutely stunning. And I took my breath away, and it actually made me feel proud to be an American. It really did. The people that were on the stage there, Lady Gaga's rendition was absolutely stunning. When she, as she was singing around freedom, turned around and was facing the flag, it almost seemed to me like she was turning her back on all these insurrectionists, and it more than just turning her back, but it was really inspiring to me. That the Catholic priest. Now I go to church. I go to church once a year when I'm at my daughter's house for Christmas, so I'm not what you'd call a practicing Catholic. The church itself hasn't been my most noble aspiration to talk about the Catholic Church. In fact, we will have a little story about it a little later. But the Catholic priest who gave that homily at the beginning was really a universalist, a progressive, a person with a heart. And when he spoke about the collective dream and how we dream and how we collectively dream together, he almost sounded like Sitting Bull giving a talk, or something you might hear an American Indian talk about. I'm going to read a few lines from the poem by Amanda Gorman, and let me just grab a couple lines here. We braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always justice. Stunning, absolutely stunning. And one second, I didn't think we were going to get a call today. Yeah, hello, who's this? I thought you were gone. I thought you were gone. Seriously, you're in Mar-a-Lago. I know, but you're not president anymore. And I really don't have that much interest in continuing the conversation with you. What do you think? You were calling. You're looking for work. Is that right? I see. Well, yeah. I do this YouTube show, but you could be a bigger hit. You'd probably get millions of followers. You could do pretty good on YouTube, I think. Why not? Give it a shot. What do you? Yeah, go ahead. Give it a shot. I mean, what have you got to lose? Oh, yeah, well, I know that's what happened the last time you tried to do something and you lost. Well, it happens, and, you might be a little embarrassment. It doesn't bother you. No, well, I can see that too. Well, anyway, that was the New Yorker cover, and I sort of liked that a little bit better. I thought it was a little bit more appropriate rather than you just walking around dumpy. I'd rather see you getting carried away, and not yourself getting carried away, but us carrying you away. So I think that went pretty well, don't you? You don't, huh? Listen, there was a couple of little side points here. How did that the second coup attempt go? You didn't really. It was a money raiser. You were doing fundraising since the election. Oh, so you really didn't expect them to get that far? No. But you got in a lot of trouble for it. They went too far. I said, well, you told them to. Well, yeah, but then you went the other way. How come you weren't with them? You hadn't had a burger yet. Okay, well, anyway, listen, you made a lot of money, and that's the good part of the whole thing. And you're the only president. I mean, this is really historic. You're the only guy that actually has two impeachments going for you. And you're probably the first president, in the history of a lot of places who's tried to do, more than one coup. That's for sure. Hold it a second, would you? I think there's another call coming in. Yeah, there is, but it's on a different line. It's on a landline. It's on a landline. Yeah, hold on. Yeah, let me just put this down one second. I'll be right there. Yeah, hi. Who's calling, please? Is that right? It's you got right in on this. How did you find out about this so quickly? Son of a gun. All right. Well, hold on a second, Joe. Yeah, listen, Donald. That's it. I got somebody more important to talk to, and you're sort of over with. So, arrivederci. Okay, goodbye. Let's hang that up. Okay, hang that up. Yeah, Joe. Joe, what's up? It's really nice to hear your voice, and you can speak up a little bit. You can speak up. No, don't. You don't have to be that soft. You can speak up a little bit. There was a great article. Yeah, I know you got a mess there. I'll get to that in 1 second. But I wanted to say, David Brooks the other day, he said, you were a genius at separating politics and cultural events. You were a genius at separating politics and culture. What do you say about that? Aw shucks, aw shucks. That's your answer. Listen, don't, Mr. Rogers, too much on me here, would you? All right. Listen, how's your Save the World folder going? I used to have one on my computer. A lot of us did here. It's pretty filled. I'll bet it's filled up. Listen, you see the picture over there, right? Yeah, let me put it up on the top of the screen and get it off the full screen. That was a Time magazine. Yeah, I know it didn't look that bad physically, right? But Time magazine, some of the people at Fox News thought it looked like that. But anyway, the thing was this. How are you going to clean up this mess? Michael Cohen offered help to help you clean it up. If anybody can clean up a mess behind somebody, it's Michael Cohen. Listen, I'll tell you what, we're a few minutes into this. I'll get back to you next week after you've signed a few more executive orders and gotten a few more things done. I got a little rift here about how long it's going to take to straighten things out, so maybe next week or so we'll talk again. All right, it's really nice having you there, Joe, in the hot seat. It's a pleasure that you're there, really. Seriously, it is. It really is. Joe, go for it. Whatever you want to do, just go big. I'm telling you, go big. That's the best way to do it. Go big, and if you don't get everything, you'll get a lot of what you set out to do. Jerry Brown said that. He was quoted today. He was in the paper today, and he said, dream big, go big. So Joe, go big, Joe. All right, we'll talk to you next week. Take care, Joe. Well, that was nice talking to him for a change. Somebody with a little sanity in their voice, somebody who's not out to get me and is really as concerned about other people. We have been talking, or I have been talking, about the collapse of capitalism and democracy as we know it. And this poem that I'm going to read a few lines of it. I'm not going to read the whole thing. This was printed the other day in the paper. They gave the whole poem in the Times a couple of days ago. And this Amanda Gorman is quite a figure to have on the American scene. She's been a political activist. She's 23 years old now, and she's been a political activist since her mid-teens. So this kid's been on it for quite a while. She was commissioned to do the poem, and she had most of the poem written when the events of the 6th of January occurred, at which point she had to insert this into the poem suddenly. Suddenly it got even worse than she could have imagined. I'm going to read a half a dozen of the stanzas from the poem, though, because I think it's worthwhile. In case you missed some of it, when day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The less we carry, a sea we must wade. I'm going to get rid of that picture there. This is get rid of the picture. So one of the issues I have with my technical staff here is getting the overhead shots down after I put them up. Let's start over again. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always justice. Moving down a couple of paragraphs, she gets to this really a little bit more about herself. We, the successors of a country and a time, where a skinny black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president only to find herself reciting for one. We'll skip a little, and then she goes down to a paragraph which sort of describes the mixed kind of culture we have here in America. To compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, and characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gaze not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. Reading down a little bit further, this line really threw me. Because America is more than a pride we inherit, it's the past we step into and how we repair it. And that's why I've got this little rift in back of me of the 60s through the 90s. And this is, I'm going to, one of these days, if I get to it, talk about how the Powell Memo of 1971 has brought us to the stage of Fox News and fake news, and how this whole thing was created basically in response to our response to the Vietnam War and to the actions against blacks in the South all during the 60s. They were hosing them and preventing them from doing anything civil. Because being America is more than a pride we inherit, it's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort nearly succeeded, and while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently deleted. And there's another theme I'd really like to pick up on. As I talked about the thing about democracy and capitalism collapsing, well, part of the collapse of the democracy has been the fact that capitalism is literally consuming it. Capitalism consumes everything in its wake. Back in the 60s, I'll go back to the 60s again, when you had all this revolutionary music, well, within 2 or 3 years, suddenly the revolutionary music became elevator music. And people who were appearing in small concerts at small crowds, making a reasonable amount of money, suddenly started appearing in stadiums and massive amounts of money. Capitalism consumed the whole counterculture. I'm going to finish up here. I'm going to jump down to the end. We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be. And the last 2 stanzas. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and dutiful, will emerge battered but beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. If only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it, to be the light. She opened the poem by saying, when the day comes, where can we find light? And she ends the poem pretty much by saying, we are the light. So we are the light. We need to go back. We need to look at what our past was and not just move with it. We need to repair it. We need to repair the past that we've been dealt, the deck we've been dealt. And we need to just keep going around. We need to reach our arms out to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony to all. Well, this woman was just absolutely stunning. She was dressed in a long yellow coat with this little red thing in her hair, and she had a ring on, really noticeably large ring, which I thought was a little obnoxiously large, and then I found out that, well, it was actually given to her by Oprah Winfrey, and it was representative of The Caged Bird Sings, which I think is a novel by Toni Morrison about oppression of black people in America, something to that effect. Anyway, the ring was given her by Oprah, and was literally a little bird in this cage, which is why the ring was so big. Interestingly, after the performance, she'd been interviewed by quite a few people, and Lin-Manuel Miranda, the guy that wrote Hamilton, among other things, was on the show, and quite to her surprise, and he said, the right words in the right order can change the world. And you proved that yesterday with your brilliant piece. The right words in the right order can change the world, and you proved that yesterday with your brilliant piece. I heard that, and I was moved by the words. I didn't think it was a Lin-Manuel original statement, and it's not. The right words in the right order can change the world. I know I've heard it in a movie. I think it was a Woody Allen movie. So I started to research it. I thought it might be a Shakespeare, but no, it's Coleridge, the poet who wrote the Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. He's the one who came up with the right words in the right order can change the world. Also, she quoted a line in the poem. She said, history has its eyes on you, which is directly out of Hamilton. Okay, so that was my take. The priest, who was very universal, the Lady Gaga. Some people weren't that crazy about J-Lo. She represented the whole Hispanic community, among other things. She was dressed in the all-white, which is the new color for the women's movement. And interestingly, she sang This Land Is Your Land, which is Woody Guthrie's song from the 1940s. Woody Guthrie was classified as a communist by the FBI, who trailed him for years. So he was an anarchistic communist who was out to overthrow the country. The guy that wrote This Land Was Your Land. No, he wasn't. And he did write that. Anyway, she sang that, and she integrated that into, I think, America the Beautiful, or another song. But anyway, the priest, the two singers, and the poem were absolutely stunning. The last preacher was a little bit weak, I thought. But overall, a little bit of pomp and ceremony, a few honor guards with some flags and things like that. And like I said, I've never been a big flag carrying kind of a guy. We do have flags, and frequently in the last few years I've hung them upside down more than right side up. And ever since probably the Vietnam War back in the 60s, when the flag was sort of wrapped around people in this patriotic sense, I've never bought that fable. I don't think it's patriotic to wrap a flag around you and then start beating people, shooting people, or starting wars. So it's just a different concept of patriotism. But without a doubt, the far right has branded themselves with the flag for years. So for me, the flag lost a lot of its impetus after during the Vietnam War. Further on, during the whole Reagan era, when he basically destroyed the unions in America, and then the Iran-Contra, where they were flooding the ghettos with tons of cocaine, so that they could arrest the low-level users, break up the families, and this was like a conscious effort that went on for years. And then the other topper would have been after 9/11, with the weapons of mass destruction. That was a whole false, fabricated story that led us into the war in Afghanistan. So one thing after another, there's been these things where the patriotic group with the little flags have done things that are just heinous, one after another. But in this case, Joe Biden is probably the only guy that could have actually beaten Donald Trump. If you look at this right now in retrospect, Biden won by 5 million votes. 70 some odd million people voted for Donald Trump, in spite of everything that had happened up to that election, in spite of the finagling that went on with the Republicans attempting to they disenfranchised hundreds of thousands of people throughout the country, in Florida, in Georgia, in Michigan, in Arizona. This story was going on all summer. It started in the spring, actually, in May. They started working these districts, disenfranchising people, coming up with new rules for people to register, and then the topper, the cherry on top of the the Sunday at the end of this deal was they tried to destroy the post office department and get rid of, literally picking up mailboxes and tossing them away, taking these really expensive multi-million-dollar sorting machines and boom, tossing them into a crusher. I mean, these guys did everything they could to fix this bloody election. At the end of the day, they still lost it. And then they did, or he did, what he always does, is he takes whatever it is he's accused of and turns it back to you. So if they're all accused of trying to steal the election, which they were doing right up to the election, so if they're being accused of stealing the election, what does he do? He turns around and says, "No, you stole the election." And then suddenly you're on his baseball field. You're playing with his rules, and you're trying to defend yourself against his ridiculous accusation. So that's sort of how it went down from my perspective. Let me move on a little bit to two interesting stories that aren't necessarily directly related to the events of the other day. Actually, I'm just going to do one story. Let me just do one story. Let's open up the screen to the whole table here, and we'll put the switcher down for a second. Okay, so we're on the big screen here, and so this was Friday's paper, and the story that really grabbed my attention, I've been following this for quite a few years, is the Vatican story. And I don't have a graphic for it or anything like that, but I'll just show it really quickly. This is the Vatican story from the Friday International section, Friday the 22nd. And it says, former Vatican banker is convicted of financial crimes. Pope Francis, when he came into office a few years ago, when Benedict stepped aside and Francis came in, Benedict was in this far-right group, to say the very least, and Francis was a real reformer, a true reformer. And when he came in, the first thing he called for was an overhaul of the Vatican Bank, and he wanted to get the Freemasons out of the Vatican. He wanted to get the Freemasons out and clean up the bank. Well, the Vatican Bank has been a source of money laundering for years, and it isn't something that some far-right conspiracy theorist made up either. And in the New York Times article here, we've got Angelo Coloni, who's been the president of the Vatican Bank for 2 decades. Well, this guy and his lawyer are both accused of embezzling millions of euros through real estate deals between 2002 and 2007. They've been sentenced to 8+ years in prison, each one, and assessed $24 million in damages, and they're also appropriating 38 million more euros, which is what, 40 some odd million dollars, from other defendants here, and they are the highest ranking Vatican officials to be convicted of a financial crime. It's all started back in 2 years ago when Francis, in 2000, he wanted to bring the financial accounting in the Vatican up to what he, quote, into international standards for combating money laundering, corruption, and other serious crimes. They go on to talk right through the middle of this how the Vatican Bank gained notoriety as a money laundering center. And let me, okay, we'll give you the, over here. Okay, here's a shot, and I dug this out of some of my old notes. If you can see that, it's not that clear, but the title is The Mysterious Death of Pope John Paul I, a treatise. And this is, I don't know, 20, 30-page treatise. Pope John Paul I died after, what is it? We'll get them both in here now. He died after 33 days in office, the shortest reigns in the history of the church. Not only that, he was the only pope whose body was cremated. Wonder why they cremated his body. Well, this is an old story that I've done on this old show I used to do a while ago. I'll show you 2 points of reference here. One, I have this book which is very difficult to get nowadays. This guy wound up being literally executed the day before he was going to have a major showing of his work. A part of his work was used in a federal case that showed that the Bush family was involved in the money laundering and how the Iran-Contra money was flowing. What this guy was doing, he was taking information and keeping really good records on little 3x5 index cards of different events. Then he would take the events and he would put them in an order that made sense on a timeline. So this, for example, is just taking a look at that. This is, you probably can't see this real clearly. Whitney Reader wrote about this guy a long, long time ago, and that's how I found out about him originally. I got this book for somewhere around $60, probably a dozen or so years ago. I lent it to somebody, never got it back, and it cost me over $200 to get a second copy. Very difficult to get this book. And the circumstances surrounding the death of Mark Lombardi are a show in itself. But one of his main drawings in here is the Inner Sanctum, the Pope and his bankers, Michael Sidoni and Robert Calvi. He's got this whole chart here connecting the New York mob with the Vatican, with the Italian mob, and how they interacted and laundered money. An amazing look at the history of the bank, and it's really nice to have somebody like Pope Francis, who is obviously a progressive, who a lot of the righties in the church aren't too crazy about. I thought that was absolutely stunning, that this was sort of buried in the middle of all of this crazy political stuff going on. I'll flip ahead a couple of pages. You've probably heard this already, but Giuliani, they're trying to take away Giuliani's law license in New York, and dozens of lawyers are calling for them to disbar him because of the false claims he made and how he gave the incendiary speech repeating the false claims on January 6th. And they're investigating him for dishonesty, fraud, deceit, and misrepresentation in and out of court. And Giuliani's response was, "You want to disbar me? Hey, I think I'm going to move to disbar you." These guys are gangsters. These guys are gangsters. Earlier this week, they were wondering whether Giuliani was going to be brought in on the defense of Trump for the impeachment, and the answer is no. But I'll tell you who is going to be brought in, and it's going to be, what was his name? Dershowitz. Before the 6th of January was even over with, Dershowitz jumped in and was just dying to defend Trump at the impeachment. He knew there'd be an impeachment, and literally within less than 24 hours after the incidents of January 6th, he was jumping on the bandwagon to represent Donald. It's almost a half hour now, and I've been going on a bit much. The last thing I was going to do was fancy. It's a letter to the editor. Fancy degree, so what? And the guy's writing to the letter saying, never forget what Ted Cruz did. And the fact that Ted Cruz graduated from Princeton and Harvard, and that Josh Hawley graduated from Stanford and Yale Law. People have been using this as a defense for not indicting these people for what they did. That they've got such good academic credentials that you shouldn't go after these people. This was a very similar show on Law and Order SUV just this week, which talked about a prominent politician. They pull half their stories right out of the newspapers. Prominent lawyer is running for a district attorney on the show, and it turns out he has a peppered history of raping women back when he was in college days, and after that as a prosecutor. So not just college days, but quite a few. Well, every one of these incidences, especially back in college, have been buried by his frat buddies and stuff. So the guy never gets touched. This is what's reminding me of the whole thing. This thing ends with, the guy ends his letter with, if I were a Stanford, Yale, Princeton, or Harvard administrator, I'd ask myself how people who graduated from my institutions failed to learn the importance of right and wrong. I'll tell you how they failed to learn the lessons of right and wrong. they were taught them at those schools. The more prestigious these schools are, the more these people have these little men's groups, these little establishment groups within their little fraternities that bleed their way all up into the administration. Henry Kissinger, when he left the Nixon administration a few years after he had left, he went back to teaching. He wound up either going to Yale or Harvard, I forget which one, and he was notorious for opening up the class, this was public knowledge, with a statement to the effect that the normal laws and ethics that bind us in our dealings don't apply to our international legal situations. He basically is discounting law and ethics in pursuing the goals of the state. Henry Kissinger, back in the mid to late 70s. Okay, we went over the half hour. Peace, patience, and persistence, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. See you soon.